Hi, friends, and welcome to Season 3 of the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, often known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I'm an old dog who's always trying to learn new tricks. That's why at each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson, program, or activity they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. Speaking of which, I'd love to hear about what you and your friends are doing in your school library. Email me at drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com to tell me about what you're doing, offer feedback about the SLLN podcast, or to request a podcast sticker. As Amy Herman likes to say, being a guest on a podcast is a great way to show your admins you are engaged in meaningful professional development and leadership in the profession. So drop me a line and let's chat. That being said, the opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. I just like to geek out about school libraries. So without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we are back, and I am back with a returning guest, which I love, and you may remember her from all the way back in episode 17, 2 years ago, and I'm so excited, Kelly, to have you back. Thank you so much for being here again. Why don't you tell folks who you are, where you're at, and what you do?
Well, hi, Steve. I'm glad to be back. Thank you for having me. I know it's been a minute.
Yeah.
I am Kelly Hincks. I am the lower school librarian at a private school in a suburb of Detroit. So about 25-ish minutes outside the city.
Nice.
To work with preschool students to third graders, so the littles. And I just finished my 15th year as a librarian. So I've been at it for a little while.
That's awesome.
Let's see. What else do you want to know, Steve?
Well, I mean, it's last time you were here, you were telling us a little bit about sort of like how you came into school librarianship. And I'm just kind of curious, like any changes, updates, new things that have been going on in your library world?
Not too much, actually. Yeah. I feel like I've kind of settled in, not in a bad way, but like where
You've got your routines.
Yeah, where I can see growth, right? You know,
yes.
like you start a program and you hope that it like moves forward. And so we've kind of gotten to that point. It's exciting. It's exciting to watch the seeds you sort of planted a while ago actually turn into what you had hoped or the vision that you had hoped they'd have. So
absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things about school librarianship that I think are a little different or very different actually than being a classroom teacher, because I was a classroom teacher for the longest time, and you kind of have to plan week to week and, you know, marking period to marking period. And then you get to the end of the year and you start all over again. And school librarianship, it's like you said, you plant seeds and try and nurture them into something over the course of years.
Well, and because you teach the same students from year to year, you can really see that spiral, you know, that they talk about from grade to grade. But you as the teacher can see, okay, I know in kindergarten I taught you this. And in first grade, we built on it. And in second grade and by third grade, we should be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hopefully that's happening. But yeah, you can kind of see that a little differently than a classroom teacher can.
Yeah. Oh man. I love that you've got your place and you are now tending that garden, cultivating your students. It's so wonderful.
Certainly trying, Steve. Certainly trying.
Well, and last time you were here, you were telling us about hexagonal thinking, which was an awesome lesson. Absolutely loved it. This time you're here for something a little bit different. So last time it was a very specific, like I'm talking to specific grade classes about this specific lesson. This time we are going big. We are going broad. Love it.
This is a whole school program. So, you know, one of the things as librarians that is, I believe, part of my job is spreading books beyond the library, right?
Yes.
So that whole school programming is a part of what we do. You know, if you're in a building where you have to split your time, that's hard. It's hard to expand beyond, you know, your bubble. But I am full-time in my building. So I have that ability to kind of plan some whole school programming and make it big if it makes sense.
Yeah, no. And that's something that I think a lot of people outside library programs don't really get, is that we are teachers, but we are teachers who teach everyone. Like, it's not just a class at a time. It's the whole school, the whole staff. And so this is really such a great embodiment of that. So I love that you were here to talk about this.
In saying that, and I guess I'll plant this seed at the beginning. I cannot do a whole school program unless I have buy-in from my colleagues.
Yes.
From the classroom teachers who, I mean, because I can't, you'll see with this program, I can't read the book to everyone. I mean, I guess I could if I planned it differently, but the way it's planned, I can't do it. It has to be something that my colleagues are willing to bring to their classrooms. So, I bring it to them and then they bring it to their students. And so without that, I guess we'll call it buy-in for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Without that buy-in or that collaboration, I guess maybe collaboration is a better word for it. But without that collaboration with them, this wouldn't be successful. So that is a big part of when we talk about, any sort of whole school programming that you have to think about.
Absolutely. And so you had actually written about this for Knowledge Quest, which I love. And you've got 2 different pieces. They're in the show notes, folks. Check them out. They're so good. They lay out the first year you did this and then a couple of years later. And it's so great. And I'm just kind of curious, like having read through the pieces, I've got a sense of where we're going here, but like to help folks get a sense of where you came from with this. Where did this idea sort of originally come from?
So I'd say that this program happened by accident. It really did. So I had a colleague and her and I collaborated all the time on a lot of different things, but she came to me one day and she said, "Hey, did you see what the Scholastic Dollar Book was?" And by the way, this is about 4 years ago in 2022. Well, 2020, end of the school year, 2022. And she says, "Hey, did you see what the, Scholastic Dollar Book was this week?" And I was like, "No, what is it?" And she said, "It's Potato Pants by Lori Keller." And I said, "I love Potato Pants." She goes,
I have never heard of this book before. And when I saw that title, I was like, holy smokes.
Lance Vance's Fancy Pants Shop has a sale on potato pants, and Potato really wants a pair. Eggplant gets in his way. It's a whole thing. I turned the front of the Librarian to Lance Vance's Fancy Pants Shop. It was so fun. Anyway, so she came to me and she was like, "We have to do something with this. I can just do it in my classroom, or we could do it, big. The book's $1. Maybe we can buy one for the whole school." And I was like, "Well, maybe we can." So the 2 of us went in and talked to our administrator, and she was like, "I like it, but what are you going to do with this? Because if we're spending $400, we serve roughly 400 students. So if we're spending $400-ish on this, we have to have a plan.
Sure.
We can't just spend the money and give the book and call it a day.
Right.
What are you going to do with it?" So her and I went back and we brainstormed, and we went back to our administrator and we said, and we did this in a matter of like 24 hours too, because, you only have a small window with those when Scholastic offered these dollar books to order. Like it wasn't this long drawn out thing. So anyway, her and I talked. We decided that, a 1 book, 1 school program seemed to make sense. Because, obviously if we're buying this book for every student in the school, they all have it. That makes it a 1 book, 1 school kind of program.
Absolutely.
But we thought that calling it a community read made more sense for our school. Because at the beginning of the year, when this program takes place, we're focused on building community. It's a big part. We use Responsive Classroom in that it's all about the first 6 weeks of school is building a classroom community and a positive way to start the year. And so community read, that kind of phrasing made sense.
Absolutely.
Plus, we wanted to add activities within this program and not just read the book and talk about it, but also, do something with it. So we went back to our administrator and said, "We got a plan. Here's what we're thinking." She said, "Okay." So we ordered 400 copies of Potato Pants and as the dollar book. And then we set to work kind of figuring out, okay, what are we going to do? Like, what are we actually going to do with this? We had the opportunity to share at the end of the school year meetings with teachers to give them a heads up that this was coming, because teachers don't like to be surprised in the fall.
Yes.
No one does.
Especially in that.
Don't either.
Yeah, no. And at the beginning of the year, you've got like, I got to get this going. I got to get that going. So having that advanced warning is absolutely vital.
We planted the seed without giving a lot of specifics because we didn't totally have them, but saying, here's what we're thinking, here's what we're going to use. Every classroom teacher gets a copy of every community read book that we've done in hardcover. So we didn't give them the dollar book, which is a paperback and sort of stapled in the middle. It's
Sure.
lovely. It's $1. I mean,
Right.
It's amazing. Okay. But we gave them something that was going to hold up in their classroom library. And so they all got a copy of Potato Pants as well. And then from there, we started planning. So that's kind of how this started. The first year we did it, it was a 4-week program.
Okay.
So we started with a week of pre-reading, and you're going to kind of see this structure with all of the examples that I share. But we started with a week of pre-reading that we went into the opportunity to read the book 2 different times.
Okay.
As a class. The first time we read it, we focused on story elements and who the characters are and problem and solution and that kind of thing. And then the second time they read it, they focused on the SEL component because Potato gets very frustrated. He's very mad. How does he handle that anger? What does he do to solve his problem? We focused on that side of the story. And then there was an end of the unit sort of celebration. We wear a school uniform. So we actually had, anytime we don't have to wear a uniform is a very exciting day. So we wore Potato Pants, our craziest pants that you could find. You wore on Potato Pants Day at school.
Totally makes sense.
And we actually had the opportunity to have a virtual visit from Lori Keller to end the year.
Very nice.
Yes. She's a Michigan author, so that helps us.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that was kind of that unit. And throughout that unit, we did a whole school activity. So as part of that 2 weeks where we read the story twice, the teachers were given a printout of a potato. And the kids were expected to turn potato into whatever they wanted. So we had ballerina potatoes and ninja potatoes and football potatoes. And those were put outside the classroom for everyone to see. They also, this is where it kind of took on a life of its own. Each classroom teacher was given an actual potato, like a real one from the grocery store. And we just sort of felt like they would move it around their classroom, like just, where's potato today kind of thing. No, when you give a teacher a potato and you tell them do something fun with it, they decorate their potatoes. So we had potatoes.
It's like when you give a mouse a cookie, but no, when you give a teacher a potato.
Yeah. So they, went fishing with their potatoes, and they had potatoes that looked like Fly Guy, and they had potatoes with crazy hair and potato poems. And I mean, you name it, we had it. The potatoes had eyes and names, and not like the eyes that actually grow on potatoes, but like googly eyes.
Yeah, you folks, you got to go look at the article from this first one because the pictures of the drawn potatoes and the actual physical potatoes that have been tricked out are just to die for. They're so great.
That was not me. That was just totally people going, well, I'm going to rock this potato. and we have classroom windows. In each classroom, there's a window. So the potatoes were in the windows. And so it was kind of like this whole parade. You could walk the building and you could just do like a potato parade. And it was a lot of fun. It was a great way to make reading a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And
I love that you started it. Yeah. Starting it at the beginning of the year. So brilliant. That timing is so good.
And it was positive, and the reason we started it when we did was it's before our curriculum really amps up. The teachers have a little bit of flexibility in their schedule to read this kind of book and to do this extra activity. But we didn't want to make it too big because obviously teachers have a lot of things they're doing at the beginning of the year. So it's finding that balance between, making it something that's helpful and not, something that's like, oh my gosh, I have to do this too.
Right.
So, yeah. So we try to tie in as much as we can with other things that are happening.
Love it. And before we got going, I had kind of mentioned to you behind the scenes that this is sort of like you took a one read and just exploded it in the best way possible. Like, it's just so wonderful because we did our first one read in a very long time at my middle school this past year. And it was, we had a kickoff, we had a closing, we had some events along the way, but it was not as all encompassing and all engaging as what you have done here. And that may just be on me, folks. I just may be not the best one read planner because it kind of was on my shoulders and we did what we could do. But seeing what you have done with this just is so inspiring and amazing and engaging. Starting from Potato Pants, which just awesome. And all these things that you had connected with it. And again, folks, Kelly has been so kind to write out every single thing that they did with this in their first year. It's incredible. And then from there it grew, like, which is just even more amazing to me.
So the structure has stayed the same, but we did learn a few things the first year. The one thing that we learned was 4 weeks was a little bit too long.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 was better. So typically we do less pre-reading activities. We only do 2 or 3 days of that now.
Mm-hmm.
And then we shorten it so that it fits in a 3-week period. The other thing was, although Potato Pants was so much fun and like a great way to start the year, by the end of the year, when I reminded kids, do you remember we did Potato Pants? They looked at me and goes, yeah, we did that, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay. So we needed to pull it back in. If it was truly going to, be this start of the year, we wanted to make sure that it carried through.
Mm-hmm.
So the second year, we were able to kind of make those tweaks and changes to help make it a little feel, I guess, like it made sense, that it wasn't this one and done kind of really great fun activity, which you can do. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
It just, it felt like it
Kind of
went through
tied together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. And I mean, it's even if all it was the beginning of the year, like the
Sure.
community that you're building with it, like you said, calling it a community read, I think makes so much sense because it is building that sense of community. It's not just we are reading this together, but it's we are
Yes.
kind of living this experience together. And now we've got this shared point that we can all refer to, which is something that all one reads should do, but don't necessarily always get across. And so I love that was really the genesis of this, the starting point of this.
Well, and we kind of got lucky because it fell in our lap. And the book worked for preschool through 3rd grade because that's the other thing that we were constantly thinking about. I've got 3-year-olds who are itty bitty. They start the school year in the fall. Some of them have never been to school before at all. They've been at home with a parent or, with a family member. Sometimes they've done daycare or other preschool programs, but not always. And then I have, 3rd graders who are, 8 and 9 years old who, a book that's for a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old looks very different.
Yes.
And so Potato Pants worked for that. It was a little long for our pre-K 3, but those teachers are brilliant and they were able to modify and make things fit for their classroom.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that I always find a little tricky about doing any kind of one read because whatever you pick, how are you going to hit all the ability levels and interest levels? And like, it's tough. It's so tough. And I mean, I am hooked on just from the title of Potato Pants. So like, I'm in 100%.
Well, so the second year, you might be wondering, like, okay, where do you go from here? Potato Pants are magical.
Yeah.
And we had this problem, right? We had set the bar real high.
Absolutely.
And so we were like, okay, well, what book are we going to pick? And we kept just sort of waiting and seeing if something came up and, if there was a book that sort of spoke to us. Well, we got lucky again with the dollar books. Amy Wu and the Perfect Bow by Kat Zhang came through. And at that point, I can't remember if it was still $1 or if it moved to $2, but we were still able to convince our administrator, especially since Potato Pants was so successful, that it was worth it. And so we, again, were able to purchase a book for everyone in the whole school, as well as a book for every classroom library.
Having that previous experience you can draw on, and not just that, but being able to say, we have learned from that and we've got, a stronger plan going in this year that we think is going to be even better. Like I can absolutely see that being an outstanding case to administrator, even if it is ponying up more upfront for the materials, it's going to be a worthwhile experience for your students.
I keep saying we. I guess I should make sure I tell you that I've always had a partner in this, a classroom teacher, or in the last year, I actually had a whole group. I had about 6 teachers. 5 or 6, maybe 6 with me, who we met and planned. So that, again, it's that teacher buy-in piece. It's making sure that what I'm planning isn't what I think works, but what they know in their classroom works. Because again, I'm not there. I mean, I teach their students, but it's different for them at the beginning of the year than it is for me. And so recognizing that, I want to make sure that what we're sharing and what we're doing makes sense. Something, it should be fun.
Absolutely.
and it should bring this community. It shouldn't be, something extra or a chore.
Absolutely. And I think there's also that value of like anytime we collaborate,
Yes.
especially when we've got folks that we know and we trust and we understand where they're coming from, we're going to get different perspectives. We're going to get different ideas than we would if we just generate by ourselves. So absolutely totally makes sense that we're going to want partners and, helpers and collaborators to work on this with as we're even just in the planning stages. Like totally makes sense.
Yes. Plus, they could answer questions too about if a teacher had it in their particular grade level, so that it also they didn't have to make sure that it didn't all have to go through me,
Right.
which is great
Yeah,
when you can do that.
absolutely.
So anyway, back to Amy.
Yes.
Amy Wu and the Perfect Bow was great because Potato, although fabulous, is not human characters.
Mm-hmm.
And Amy is. In addition, Amy has a diversity element, and we have a very diverse student population. So this was a great way to pull in some representation.
Love it.
Anyway, so our pre-reading for this was so fun, and we've pulled it in other times because it was sort of, one of those things that you land on and go, we'll see. We took pictures of Amy and her little kitten. That's on every page. And we hid her around the school building, multiple pictures of her. But one of the things that teachers do at the beginning of the school year is take a tour of the school.
Mm-hmm.
So what became part of their tour also was looking for Amy.
Love it.
So it kind of tied in those two pieces together.
And like turning the school tour into almost not quite a scavenger hunt, but like now we're adding that extra element. Like, yes, you are seeing the school, but also pay attention. And I bet you that's going to sink some of those details of the school tour into those little minds better than if we were just walking around taking it all in.
Plus, before they even started reading, they already knew who the main character of this story was. Me was the girl to know.
Love it.
Which was really, really fabulous.
Yeah.
This book, again, had an SEL component. So we had the pre-reading activities. We gave teachers lots of options of things they could do in their classroom to tie into this story. And we gave them that flexibility to kind of choose what made sense for them. Some teachers made bow out of Play-Doh. Some teachers, talked about different elements. Some teachers drew the cat. The author or the illustrator has a how-to draw Amy's cat. So some did that. So there were lots of great ways for the teacher to kind of differentiate what works in their classroom for this one. Then from there, they read the book like they did the first time, and they looked at different story elements. And then the second time they read the book, it was focused on more of how did Amy overcome her problem? How did she work through it? What were the emotions that she was feeling? And did they match her actions? Those kinds of things for students. And they had a activity. So preschool did something different than the older grades with this one, but preschool actually made pretend bow out of felt pieces.
Nice.
And then with the older grades, they did a growth mindset activity. So that was in the shape of a bow, and that went outside their classrooms.
Love it.
Yes. So this one didn't have as big of a celebration at the end, but that was okay. It worked. And what was great about Amy is Amy Wu, her book is part of a series.
Okay.
So that whole tie-in piece, we could pull it in later. So like we did a World Read Aloud Day celebration, and we had a video of the author reading another one of the stories out loud so that all the kids could listen to that.
I love a series.
Yeah. Another one was we do a March's Reading Month program, and the other two books could be a part of that. So we were able to pull it back in, and Amy became something that, was talked about more than just at the beginning of the year.
Right. Kind of becomes that touch point throughout the year that like almost like the mascot for the year, which is awesome.
Yes.
I love that the food element too is something that I think as humans, we're all going to relate to any kind of food element. And I'm just imagining like the different ways you could potentially bring that into like having some sort of like we're going to have a snack day.
We tried. We have lunch served through our school, and we tried to get bow for the kids for lunch one day, but it just became a very difficult task. And so we couldn't do that element, but we did send home the recipe. And there were families that sent me pictures of their kids making bow with them at home.
That's so great.
Able to pull in sort of this community element so that they could try it on their own if they wanted.
Oh, that's so cool, man.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining those pictures going around and,
Yes. Yeah. That
boy.
was fun. Yeah.
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 So 2 years in, and you have built this into something that is reaching not just beyond the library, but beyond the school. Like, this is now going home. This is great.
Going home. Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
And so that led us to our third year. Now, by this point, Scholastic didn't offer dollar books anymore. So we are on our own to make choices.
This is where the money really
That
starts
we can't
to,
just
yeah.
let it fall in our laps anymore. No. So this year, this time around, we had a teacher who said, this would make a great community read book. And a different teacher than I had worked with in the past who said, this might make a great community read book. And as I sat there and looked at it, and as my partner sat there and looked at it, we went, it really would. And because it was brought to us by somebody else, again, there's that built-in buy-in, right?
Yeah.
They, made the suggestion and we heard it.
And they were only able to make that suggestion because you had put this in place and let them see that this is a thing that we can do. This is a thing that exists that we can make happen in our school. So you're enabling that collaboration and what you've done.
Right. In addition, so we had done 2 years of food and we wanted to avoid food this time around, only because we didn't want, not that there couldn't be another great food book, and there's nothing wrong with food books. It just felt like we didn't want people to always think, well, the community read has to be about food.
Sure.
It doesn't. It just seemed like that keep happening.
Right.
This one was Box of Text by Kim Smith. And Box of Text is all about, it's like got a major maker component.
Okay.
And we hadn't done that tie-in yet. We had done a lot of other things, but we hadn't really done like a true maker activity. And this one had the ability to do that.
I mean, anytime we can get hands-on stuff, that is so important for connecting the learning that's going on to something that students can externalize and therefore internalize by like being able to manipulate pieces and do whatever they're doing. So I love that you've kind of built from where kind of designing potatoes to we are, thinking about how we're going to find characters and like bring that building our bow, even if the bow is ourselves with our SEL component. And now you're bringing it into like a real, let's call it a formal makerspace sort of a design project. So great.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like a natural place to go with it.
Yeah.
And again, this book worked for 3-year-olds as well as 8-year-olds. When you're looking at it, there was a lot of ways to differentiate it to make it work for someone who's real little versus someone who's a little bit older. The fun thing we did for the pre-reading, and I'll send you the pictures, Steve, because I realized that this one I did not write a blog post about this one. And this one has some great pictures for the mystery bag activity. And so basically I made some things out of cardboard. I made 4 sets of them, which was a little work on my end, but I got to use hot glue. So that was great.
Yeah.
Right. And those objects went in to a brown paper bag with a recording page that just said, what could this be? And then that got delivered to classrooms. And so every day or every other day, teachers for that pre-reading period, so I think it was 3 days in a row. So they got 3 or 4 different objects. They opened it up and they just for 5 or 10 minutes said, okay, what is it? And wrote it down. And then that went back in the bag and went to a different classroom the next day. So that, they saw a couple of different objects and they brainstormed a couple of different things that this could be.
Okay.
And all of these objects were made out of cardboard. So that tied back in. And then those lists I compiled and we had them outside the library so that we could see what everybody thought this could be. And it was so many brilliant ideas.
Yeah.
Very creative, some silly. But
there's something to be said for that too, though. Like we've got to have fun with it and we've got to enjoy it. So that's great.
And so then kids throughout the unit could then go, oh, that was my idea. Or, oh, I didn't think about that. Right. And these big signs were outside the library. I have giant windows. So they were on the windows for people to look at and see.
Very cool. Very fun.
And that was such a fun beginning of the pre-reading activity.
Yeah.
For the teachers, it was easy because they just got their bag. They had 5 or 10 minutes. They wrote down the ideas and they put their bag back. And so it didn't take, tons of time for them to participate. And yet everyone
Anytime.
did.
Yeah. Well, and when you can take stuff off of teachers' plates, they are so much more ready to buy in.
Yes. Yes. This one also, again, we read the book twice. We focused on the story elements and then the SEL components. And this one had a lot of how to work together kind
Okay.
of pieces, which was great because
Yeah.
at the beginning of the year, that is a lot of what you're teaching in early childhood.
Oh, yeah.
How
Yeah.
to get along,
Plus,
how to work together.
yeah. And
Yeah.
going with the idea of the community read, we are going to be together as a community. We're going to work together as well.
Yes. And then for our whole big celebration, teachers were asked to create something out of cardboard within their classroom. But to make it so it tied in, every year we have a pep assembly near homecoming.
Okay.
Our school, we have 3 campuses. So homecoming is something that goes from our high school all the way to our lower school.
Interesting.
And so they send high school students over. There's this whole big pep assembly in the gym. It's loud and it's fun, and the band is there and the cheerleaders and the whole thing. And one of the things that teachers do for the pep assembly is bring something the kids, streamers, pom-poms, pennants, things like that. Well, we
Okay.
said this year, your pep assembly item needs to be made out of cardboard.
Oh.
As big or as small as you want it, but it needs to be like you are a box of tech and you are making it out of cardboard. So we had some great ideas. We had, hats, we had pennants, we had like noisemakers. We had one of the pre-K 3s actually made a school bus out of a giant refrigerator box. Yes, they went big. And again, they had the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
So they made giant school bus.
I'm absolutely picturing the little kids inside of the bus, walking the bus in, like
A giant school bus that they walked down to the pep assembly with, like they were showing up to the homecoming game in their school bus. Yes. And what was really fun was those high school students had no idea that this was happening. So, they're looking around going, what is it with all this cardboard stuff? And so we had to kind of fill them in. So now we've expanded it, right? Beyond just the lower school to our older students. Not that they then took it with them or anything, but it connected.
Yeah.
And again, this was something that was already happening. So for teachers, it wasn't extra.
Right.
And there was a home component with this one as well. So there was a challenge for students to create at home. I gave directions and they could send me, pictures of what they created. And I was able to share those with the rest of the school community.
Man, it's funny because I hadn't realized the pep rally component of this. And it's just kind of blowing my mind as I'm picturing what could have gone on, what was probably going on with all of this.
Well, and again, that's not always what happens, right? I mean, the pep assembly always happens, but like our community read component doesn't always fit.
Right.
But in this case, it made sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And again, like you've got that thread weaving through, pulling it all together. And in this case, like showing the students that not only is this book something that we kind of refer to, but the skills that we have taken from the book, the skills that we have talked about with the book are skills we can use in different formats and different settings in different ways. So great.
And then Kim Smith became our author visit for that year. She didn't end up coming because there was a whole snafu, but that was our goal, right? With our with tying it back in. So we did share her second book that she had. We were able to kind of tie it back to other things that she had written so that we could bring it in again throughout the year. Plus, maker spaces, being a maker is a part of other things that we do. So we were able to then reference.
Absolutely. Man, that's funny. Like I never would have connected Makerspace and One Read, Makerspace and Community Read, but like such a great natural connection if you find the right title. And like you're saying, like maker skills are things that we're going to use throughout the school year. So like what a great just spiral of that concept.
Right. It was an easy match.
Yeah.
To like referencing and referring back.
Man. Now you got me thinking about what we should do for our next One Read. Okay. But that's for another time.
I'm only giving picture books. So that's also like, if you wanted to do this with something different at this point, my ideas are picture book friendly.
Yeah, no, which is great. And like, I think there's absolutely a place for picture books at all grade levels.
Well, for sure. Absolutely.
But that's a conversation for another time.
Yes.
Coming back to like, you're doing this awesome community read. So now that was year 3. That brings us up to this past year.
Yes. And
Okay.
there is a blog post about this one.
Yes.
And this one kind of, again, happened by accident. So we used the book, The Wonder You See by Joanna Gaines.
Okay.
And this book, one of our teachers had fallen in love with this book. And so she then used it as a writing prompt in her classroom.
Mm.
And what she did was she found her kids were having trouble coming up with ideas. And so she said, let's take a wonder walk. They read the book and then they went outside with their journals and they focused on the things around them and the things they wondered about and wrote them in the journals. And then they came back in and they wrote about something on their list.
Love it.
And she was so excited at how well it went that she did a social media post for it and tagged Joanna Gaines. And right. And,
I think I see where this is going. I love it.
Like we do, right?
Yeah.
And Joanna Gaines picked that up and replied and then, responded in such a wonderful way that
so cool.
It became a bigger thing, right?
Yeah.
And the music teacher in our building looked then more closely at the book and said, ooh, she always bases the winter concert that we have on a book. Because we have such a diverse population, she doesn't like to focus on just one holiday because our students celebrate so many different things.
Sure.
So she focuses on more of a book theme, and then she pulls in lots of different songs.
Love that. Boy, that's a great music teacher.
She is fabulous. And she looked at this book and said, I can tie this into a holiday concert because it's all about wonder. And what is holidays about? It's about wonder. What is a winter? It tied in so beautifully. So she got permission to turn this into a concert. And I went, well, if you're using it for your concert, then I guess it just makes sense. That we use this for the community read, because if every kid is going to be looking at this book, or almost every kid, the holiday concert or the winter concert is for kindergarten through 3rd grade.
Okay.
But we can tie it into preschool very easily.
Yeah.
So anyway, make a long story short, that's how this year's book came to be. It actually worked out really beautifully because we hadn't done questioning or wondering or taking a look and slowing down and saying, what do I see? And, so much of research that we teach is that whole skill of see, think, wonder, analyze,
Absolutely.
How do I create a question about a topic? I mean, we teach that as librarians. So this is just the stepping stones for that. So what we ended up doing was we started a learning wall with this one. If you're not familiar with learning walls, they're basically just a giant wall to display learning. And it's very student driven. It usually starts with a guiding question, and then you add to it and you take things off the wall and you put new things up on the wall. So we had a whole school one outside the library on this giant bulletin board. And it was a tree because it fit with the book, and each grade level received different colored leaves. And for pre-reading, they started with what wonder actually is. What is it?
That's a tough question.
Boy, it is a very, very hard question. And the preschool answers were fabulous. Wonder is a store. Wonder is, playing outside, it's a vacuum cleaner. Like that's wonder, right? That's fine. They're 3. That's what, that's where you see growth, right?
Absolutely.
And our 3rd graders' answers were brilliant. And so that's where you see that growth and that change. With 3rd grade or for 2nd and 3rd, they could write their own leaves. With the younger grades, we did a class leaf or a couple of them, and they got to put them up on the tree. So you watched the trees start with bare branches, and then the leaves were added, and then the leaves were added. There were different.
The picture of this is awesome. Like I'm looking at it right now, and it's just so cool. Like you've got grass, you've got your tree, you've got your leaves, and it's just so. I want to be able to just zoom in and read every single one of these little notes. It's so great.
And then one of the things, so that was pre-reading, yes, and it turned out to be I typically don't worry about it being pretty. I know a lot of elementary school librarians and teachers worry about if it's pretty. That's not really my jam. Mine is more does it make sense? And is this display meaningful to students? But in this case, we did make it pretty and meaningful.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And it was right when you walked in the building. So it was very much a focal piece at the start of the school year for parents who were coming in or other people who were coming in.
Love it.
Yeah. So each layer, there was things in the grass, that was reflections. The birds in the sky had a different purpose. We have a die cut machine. So it was my best friend.
Oh, I bet.
So then they took wonder walks with this book. So we did still read it twice. This one was a little harder. There wasn't really an SEL component, but we did talk a lot about, what does it look like to stop and observe?
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like to notice something?
Mm-hmm.
To ask a question.
And I could see that, if I could see that getting sort of like, okay, if we're paying attention, if we're noticing things, if we're wondering about the stuff around us, let's include the people around us. Let's wonder about what goes on with them. Let's wonder about what they're thinking and feeling. And like, maybe there's a way to kind of segue that into thinking SEL. Sorry, just.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You could expand on this
Yeah.
idea of wonder and questioning throughout.
Yeah. So, I mean, what a powerful, so simple, but the simple ideas are often the most powerful ones. So great.
And the illustrations in this book were great. So you could pull a lot from the illustrations as well as the words. The words were more of a poem type story, but that was different than books that we had chosen in the past, which was also wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So they took 2 different wonder walks with this one. The first one they took as a class, and they took pictures of things that they wondered, and then they wrote questions. I wonder how the flag gets up in the flagpole. I wonder what these little pieces in between the bricks are for. I wonder where this hole goes. Very much little kid driven.
Yeah, I love that.
I wonder why this is painted red. Those were, legit questions.
Yeah.
And those pictures were printed and put up on the wall as well with their questions. And I encouraged the teachers to just pick, 3 to 5. Like, this is not supposed to be hard for you. Print 3 to 5, right? And then put them up. And then the second time around, I borrowed an idea. All my good ideas are borrowed. So if you're wondering where these things come from, they're not my own. I borrowed an idea from, and I'll send you the link because I don't think I did. It's called The Teacher Bag. She wrote a blog post about the sense of wonder, and she had wonderful, wonderful ideas in this blog post about how to get kids to slow down and look and ask questions. And she had an activity called One Small Square.
Okay.
Each kid was given a small construction paper square, and they took it on their wonder walk and they picked something to cover with their square, and there was a hole in the middle. So basically it framed the what they were looking at.
Okay.
So massive.
Right.
Teeny tiny little spot. And they drew a picture of that on their paper. And then in kindergarten, they wrote a word about it or 2. They labeled, essentially. With older grades, they wrote more questioning and answering. With pre-K, they just took a picture of what they found and said, I see. Because if you can't see it, if you don't notice something, then you can't be asked to then analyze it or to reflect on it or to think about it more unless you're stopping to say, I see a hole in the ground or I see, birds in the tree. If you're not doing that, you can't then build on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And this was a great activity because we use a lot of, photographs, primary sources throughout the year. And we do see Think Wonder activities. And so this kind of set the stage for those things later in the year.
Yeah. And there's also, even if you did that with older age groups, like just thinking about this is what this person noticed, which is different than what this person noticed. And let's talk about like different perspectives. Let's talk about where our attention goes, how, there's just so many ways you could build with that.
Well, even just getting them to choose what their small square was going to be.
Sure.
Because narrowing down that focus, right?
Yeah.
There are so many things out here that I think are awesome. How am I going to pick just one small, piece of all of this stuff?
Yes.
Which was great.
Yeah.
So, and then those reflections were put outside the classroom so that everyone could sort of see everyone else's thought process and learning. And again, questioning has been something we've been talking a lot about as a school, like how to get kids to ask questions. With little kids, they want to tell stories, which I love. But sometimes I can't have you tell me a story. I need you to to come up with a question, what
Right.
you want to know. And so this was a great way to kind of introduce that and then build on it as the year went on.
Boy. And like you said, like even just the focusing, even at middle school level, if I could get the kids to focus sometimes on a specific thing, like having them take that moment and think about, okay, let's look for a specific thing that we have a question about. Just, man, now I'm thinking about how you could do that with like in a middle school or high school. You could have that piece of paper with the hole cut out and say like, okay, we're going to go through the book. And when you find a thing that you want to focus in on, like you're going to focus that, what are the words that you really want to see? Like, oh boy.
You could do a lot with it.
Yeah.
Yes, you could do a lot with
Sorry.
it.
Didn't
No,
mean to go off the reservation.
you're
Just
totally right. This could really be expanded. The tricky part with this one was, these were bigger concepts.
Mm-hmm.
These were harder concepts.
Yeah.
This wasn't just decorate a potato and tell me what you turned it into. And
Yeah.
so for some classes, this one was a little harder. It was a little bit, I don't want to say not that it didn't work as well, but it did. It absolutely did. It was beautiful. What came out of it was so cool. But this one didn't engage quite the way as potato did.
Right.
And so that's something to think about as we choose a book for next year, which is what we did.
Which is important because like it's, you're hitting such different skills and areas and ideas with each one of these. And like, I love that you're trying to think about balance and kind of finding not just the book that works across grade levels, but also like different tones, different foci for these different units that we're going to look at. So it's so great that you're reflecting on how things are done.
And I think one of the things is, the first one kind of fell in our lap. And I think then looking and paying attention as the school year has gone on has helped me going, okay, could this work? Or like I said, once the music teacher picked up this one, I went, well, this just makes sense. Kind of paying attention to what's happening throughout the building makes choosing easier.
Right.
Because then you can tie in and it's not this I picking a book because I like it.
Right. Right. Well, and it requires that you are that you do have that lens to look through of what is a thing that we could use for this idea that we have. And if that's not in your mind somewhere, it's impossible to do this reflection and think about how are we going to tie these things together. So like, I love that Potato Pants just was fun and we're going to dive in and we're going to see where this goes, but it has led to so much more. Great.
So for next year, you might be wondering, where are you going, right?
Yeah.
For next year, we decided we have to, go back a little bit and do one that's really, really engaging and fun. Because like I said, we went a little higher level last year and we want to make sure that, we still keep it fun since that's kind of the goal at the beginning of the year. Reading should be fun. So we want to keep that mission sort of in the front of our plans. But I was waiting for a book to sort of come to me. Like, come to me. Where's the book for this year? The dollar book sort of came to me. The, box of text the teacher brought, the wonder you see was something that sort of led to something else. This year that didn't happen. And so I crowdsourced it.
Okay. Hey, totally makes sense. Like, we can't just hope. Sometimes we are so lucky that things fall in our lap and it's awesome when it does, but you can't depend on coincidence working all the time. So,
nope. And so I crowdsourced it. I started to go, we don't have a book for next year and I need to choose one because it's getting to this point. And then it also made me wonder, okay, has this program lived its life?
Sure.
I am not somebody who's going to keep doing something because we've done it before. I want to make sure it still makes sense, that it fits, that it's something people want to do. So I crowdsourced that first. Most people were like, yeah, sure. My administrator was like, why wouldn't we? And so I was like, okay, just making sure that everyone's on the same page, that I'm not just doing this because I've done it.
Right.
And then once we had sort of established that, I was like, okay, well, now I need a book. So I asked around if people had any ideas. I went to lunch with several different grade levels, planted seeds, got some feedback from a few, and then I picked a couple others. And so I ended up with 4 options that I thought could work as a community read choice. And they were all fun, just really focused on that funny element. Still had the SEL components that we could tie into and all that beginning of the school year feel, but kept it light.
Okay.
And the one we use PD in the Potty, the ed tech teacher and we do it together. She does a curriculum or technology piece, and I do bathroom books. So I choose 4 books every week that are something new that if you're interested in, you could ask me for.
Gotcha.
Yes. So my bathroom books for that week allowed them to vote.
Nice.
There was sticky notes and a pencil in the bathroom. They could write down what number and put it in a little bucket. I also sent it as an email in case they didn't feel that they had time to vote in the bathroom. They could email me back, talking about accessibility, making sure that everyone has a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And the winner was the world's best class plant by Audrey Vernick and Liz Garten-Scallion. So we're all going to have class plants next year.
Nice.
And it's going to become a whole thing.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah. And like the plant itself is a great lesson to have throughout the year, but then we're going to start it with the book. We're going to tie it into the plant. Plant's going to be here with us. We're going to learn from it, and we're going to learn from the book. Like, just so good.
And it's a beginning of the school year type story. I mean, not every book we've picked is, but this is. So that's a great tie-in too, because there's some very natural back to school type themes. You know, we're all going to get a plant. We're going to get to name them. So we're all going to get to enjoy each other's names. There's been talk about the plants traveling with the class to different places in the building. We'll see how that goes.
Nice.
You know, they'll have some responsibility elements with it so that they can take care of their plant. So yes, that is the book for next year. So
nice. Oh, that's so great. Boy, I love how usually when I talk to somebody, we kind of get into real specific detail about one specific thing they've done. And I love that we've had a chance to kind of look through a broad development of this program that you've been working on. And I got to say, I think my favorite thing, I mean, there's so much awesome stuff going on here, but I think my favorite thing that you said is that you wanted to just pause and say, is this something that has sort of run its course? Because like you said, it's so easy to just keep doing something that we've been doing and not necessarily think, is this still serving the purpose that it started out serving? You know, we just kind of get into a rut or we get into a practice and we don't think about, is this really worth our time? Is it worth our energy? Is there something better we could be doing with this time and effort and material?
Well, yes, it's a lot of work for me. And I pull in a team of teachers and they're willing to come in one summer afternoon and help me organize and plan it, which is their time.
Yeah.
And then your classroom time. You know, we want to make sure that this is a good use of your time at the beginning of the school year.
Absolutely.
You know, I never want to assume that this makes sense. I always want to make sure that, I'm reflecting and saying, is this program still a good fit for the school where we are right now?
Mm-hmm.
And we have taken programs out, added programs in based on, the needs of the students and the community. So,
yeah. I mean, the school grows and changes just like our students do. So we've got to be aware of that as we go along through the years.
Yes. So at this moment in time, it is still happening next year. I just got permission to share about this book at our meetings next week.
Awesome.
So I'm hoping that teachers are excited about it and we'll be thinking about plants all summer long.
So good. So much fun, man.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so many, what I love about what you're doing is that it is just so scalable. It's so friendly, open to differentiation and diversification, and like all our different ability levels can take part in the stuff that's going on here. Clearly, this is something that your staff and your students are enjoying, that it's coming back, that they have basically voted to say, yes, we want to continue doing this.
Like I said, it's kind of good at hitting at a good spot in our school's calendar as far as, the beginning of the year is not as heavy as in curriculum. And so because of that, they do have a little more flexibility. And they're always looking for some really meaningful things that they can do with students that are low stakes. So this is in a lot of ways, the Wonder Walks last year, they would take their kids outside to take a brain break at the beginning of the school year. So let's just pull this in while we're out there. Right. The the maker space type activities with Boxatex, that was an activity they were already doing anyway.
Hmm.
So we'll just pull it in. So things like that make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so much of it too, I think, really goes to your willingness to look around your school and see like what is going on already and how can we tie some things together that might otherwise be wonderful on their own, but now you've managed to make connections between these things.
That's something my administrator has always worked on. She is very open to things that connect, making sure that we're not just doing a bunch of one and dones, but instead that what we're doing builds on something else. And so whenever we can tie something together, it just helps kids, they can make those connections that way. And it's not just so isolated. And again, there's nothing wrong with an isolated program. They can be wonderful and brilliant and amazing. That's sort of the focus that she's always had. So whenever I can do that, it kind of supports her overall goals.
And anytime we can support our administrators, they're
Yes.
going to support us right back. So that's a win-win for everybody. So that's great.
Yes.
Boy. I mean, it sounds like this is just something that is beloved. And I'm kind of curious. So you've been doing this now for several years with students who have probably been through now.
I was going to say this will be year 5. So some of these kids, they'll have started it back in, pre-K 3 or pre-K 4, and they're, going through their new community read. So it's not going to be so new for them.
Yeah. I mean, I would be so curious to know like what their thoughts are, like if they are, how they're sort of remembering this.
I was going to say, that's a really good question. I should ask my 3rd graders next year.
Yeah.
If there was a favorite one, or even if they remember way back when, because they might not.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a year for them.
We could definitely ask. Yeah.
Absolutely. Huh. Boy.
Now,
well, so
I don't know, Steve, if I mentioned with Boxatex, with the Wonder You See, we did not buy every student did not get a book with that one.
Okay.
Kind of like going back, but once the $1 book or the $2 book thing sort of ended for us, we did not spend the money for every student to get a book. Every classroom teacher did for their classroom library, but not every student. It was cost prohibitive.
Sure. And that's completely understandable, especially with book prices being what they are. It can be tough. So for those books, they were only for classroom teachers? Is that how that went?
So for the $1 books or
for the later ones,
the later ones, yes. I just bought hardcover, books for the classroom teacher. So every classroom got a book, a copy of Boxatex. Every classroom got a copy of The Wonder You See. But I didn't send it home with every student.
Gotcha.
Whereas Potato Pants and Amy Wu and The Perfect Bow, both, students went home with that.
Totally got it. So I'm kind of curious, was there any thought given to maybe not every student gets one, but like all the 3rd graders get one? Or is it pretty much like we're just looking at this as everybody gets one or nobody gets one?
I was going to say, that's a great question. We've not considered one grade level getting it. At this point, I think that it seems to be working just being a classroom library book, something that's added to their classroom library. So, and we of course have the book in the library as well.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like anyone's questioning. One of the things that my school is very fortunate is my kids, the students that I teach, they have access to books, both in their classrooms and in the school library, but also at home. So for me, I don't always have to consider that component when I'm thinking about programming.
Gotcha.
It's not that I don't ever think about it, because I can't make the assumption that everyone has access, but the majority do.
Gotcha. Well, and I love too that like this started out as a one read, that we're all going to have the book and read the book.
Yes.
And now it's sort of gone into a slightly different configuration, but it's still a community read. Like you haven't removed that component, even though not everybody necessarily has the physical book in their hands.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
That's a really interesting, and I wonder, now you've got me wondering like if that might work at upper grade levels. Like I can absolutely see like with picture books, that totally makes sense to me that it's going to be in the classroom library and the teacher either students can read it or the teacher can read to the class. Like that totally makes sense to me. And
you could totally write a grant and get copies of the books for everyone if that's something that is necessary in your building. Like there are ways to get copies of every book for every student. Again, like I said, after some reflection, we didn't feel that it was a necessary component for our community read. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't say that down the line we change our mind.
Sure.
Like at this moment in time, that's where we are.
I
So,
love it. I just love that you're willing to sort of examine the details of what you're doing and make choices about, it doesn't have to continue in exactly the same shape it started in,
yeah.
which is I'm going to go on a digression for a second here, but at my middle school, there were some teachers back in the mid 90s who started a trip to Washington, D.C. for our 8th graders at the end of the school year. And it became a 3-day, 2-night overnight for the entire 8th grade class. And that happened for 30 something years, just about a little less than 30. And when COVID rolled around, we weren't able to do it. And it kind of just, it ended. And honestly, it was time for it to end. Like it had kind of run its course, but there are still parents and administrators in the district who are like, well, we've got to bring it back because this was such an institution. It was like, but when they started it, it matched curriculum. It matched stuff that they were literally doing in the classroom, and it grew out of that. And now it doesn't anymore. It doesn't fit. And you want to bring it back for the nostalgia or because, you feel like it's equitable because the older kids did it and now the younger kids should have the opportunity. But that's not necessarily good educational practice. So I love the willingness that you've got to kind of step back and say, is this really what should be happening?
Right. And that's with any program. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, most definitely. So.
Man, well, this is awesome. I'm so glad you came to share this. I think we are now at the point we're going to take our 90-degree turn and go into our book break.
Book break. Sweetie.
Fabulous.
So, whatever kind of book you want to bring, personal, professional, whatever it is, what do you got that you want people to know about?
So, I feel like I've been talking about books this whole time, but
that's okay. We love books.
This is a fairly new one. A lot of people have been sharing this one, but I picked it up and it's brilliant. The Whale's Tale and the Otter's Side of the Story by Kate Messner and Brian Biggs. And if you haven't read this one yet, when I first got it, I was like, okay, I like Kate Messner. I'll pretty much buy anything she writes. But I read it and I had to read it twice to make sure I totally knew what was going on. So you read it the one way first, and it's the whale's perspective. So whales are the best, and it gives you all sorts of reasons that otters are not and whales are. Then when you get to the end, it says, now read the book from back to front, and you get the otter's side of the story. So when you read it the other way, it's the otter's perspective and why whales are not as good as otters and otters are the best.
Huh.
And it works both ways. Like when you read it, you think this is not going to work both ways, and it does.
So clever.
So clever. It's great for point of view. How you can make things fit one person's point of view versus another, which is totally higher level and could be used in middle and high school. In my library, I read it to 3rd graders and we talked about, perspective, which side. We talked about opinion. We didn't get into the whole higher level, let's make data match what we wanted to say. We didn't get into that. But it was such a great, the kids had to figure out what was happening and how one way is one thing and one way is another. And it's quick. It's a quick read. The illustrations are simple, which I kind of love. So it doesn't take away from the whole concept of the book. And it was fun. It was a fun read aloud.
Wow. I like that. I haven't heard of that one yet.
Yeah, it's new. I don't know quite when it was published, but it's 2026.
Okay. Great. That might have to come into my middle school library because I'm trying to build up our picture book set, and that sounds like it's going to fit very well.
This one, you could have you could expand on it. You could just read it and enjoy it and is what it is. But then it does have a lot of potential to be so much more. Nice.
Man, that's awesome. Well, now I've got another great book to add to my list on top of Potato Pants and Box of Text and all these other great books. So wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and share this. It's just so much to think about, and you've included links. We're going to have links to your 2 pieces you wrote about this so that folks, you need to go check this out. It's so good. Thank you so much, Kelly. You are such a treasure, and I'm so glad that you came and shared all this with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Steve. It was fun to chat about it.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for the episode. They feature links to resources shared by our guest, as well as ways to keep in touch with them, and links to the book break titles. I'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback, a comment, an idea, a question, or something you want to share, You can email drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. Know a librarian with something we could learn from? Let us know. Until next time, be good, be safe, and be well.